I never thought I'd see the day when somebody pointed at me in my own driveway, in front of my own house, and screamed that I was stealing my own car. But that's exactly what happened one Saturday morning in Maplewood Estates. And the person doing the screaming? Patricia Walker? Patricia wasn't just a neighbor. She wasn't just the blonde across the street with a fake smile and a clipboard tucked under her arm. No, Patricia was the president of the HOA. The self-appointed queen of our neighborhood. The kind of woman who thought the world revolved around her rules. And on that morning, she stood there with her phone to her ear, yelling into the receiver, "He's stealing my car. He broke into the garage and he's trying to drive it away." And he, apparently, was me, Marcus Johnson. 34 years old, homeowner IT professional, African-American man who had worked his way up from nothing to finally own a home in this little suburban slice of supposed paradise. And the car Patricia swore was hers? My brand new 2023 Ford Mustang GT, the car I had dreamed of since I was a teenager. The car I had spent years working and saving to finally afford. The cops were on their way. Neighbors were starting to peek through blinds and step outside. And there I was, standing in my own driveway, stunned by the absurdity of it all. But here's the thing. Patricia didn't just suddenly decide to accuse me of stealing. No, this moment was the boiling point of something that had been simmering for months. You see, Patricia had always looked at me like I didn't belong here. And if I'm being honest, I think the day I bought that Mustang was the day she decided to make sure I never forgot it. But let me back up, because to understand how insane this all became, you have to know the kind of place Maplewood Estates is, and the kind of person Patricia Walker really is. When I first bought my house in Maplewood, I thought I'd finally made it. For a kid who grew up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment on the south side of Chicago with 3 siblings and a single mom who worked 2 jobs, homeownership always felt like a dream. And when I signed those papers, standing in front of a 3-bedroom house with a 2-car garage, it felt like more than just a purchase. It felt like proof that all those long nights and sacrifices had meant something. Maplewood Estates looked like the kind of neighborhood you'd see on a postcard. Rows of manicured lawns, mailboxes, all painted the same neutral shade. Porches with matching hanging flower baskets. Every detail seemed carefully designed to give the impression of perfection. And behind that so-called perfection stood the Homeowners Association. Now, I knew a little about HOAs going in. Rules about trash bins, lawn height, exterior paint colors, stuff like that. I figured it was annoying but manageable. What I didn't realize was just how much power the HOA had over your everyday life. And I certainly didn't realize how far its president, Patricia Walker, was willing to go to remind people of that power. Patricia was in her mid-30s, attractive in that polished, suburban way. She had blonde hair that always looked freshly, styled outfits that screamed designer, and this wide, toothy smile that never seemed to reach her eyes. From the outside, you might think she was friendly, the type who'd bring a casserole to your door when you moved in. But it didn't take long for me to realize her smile was just another weapon, a way to sugarcoat the passive-aggressive comments she loved to drop. The first time I met her, she came strolling up my driveway as I was unloading groceries. She introduced herself like she was the mayor. "Hi, I'm Patricia Walker, president of the Maplewood Estates HOA. Welcome to the neighborhood." I shook her hand and smiled back. "Marcus Johnson. Thanks, it's good to be here." Her eyes flicked past me to my car at the time, an older black Honda Civic. The corner of her mouth twitched. "Oh, so you're the one who bought the Johnson house?" "Yep," I said.
"I guess."
"The name was meant to be." She laughed, but then her voice dropped just enough for me to catch the bite behind her words. "I have to say I wasn't expecting someone like you to move in here." I paused, staring at her, trying to decide if I'd heard her right. Someone like me. I knew that tone. I'd heard it plenty of times before in different forms, in job interviews, in classrooms, in casual conversations where people thought they were being subtle. She must have realized how it sounded because she quickly tacked on, "I mean, a single guy. Most of the people here are families." But the way she looked me up and down, the way her smile stayed plastered on her face while her eyes hardened, I knew what she meant. From that day forward, Patricia always seemed to have her eye on me. If I left my trash bin out for an extra day, I'd get a notice from the HOA if I parked slightly off-center in my driveway. She'd take a picture and remind me of the rules. The guy 2 doors down left his Christmas lights up until March. Nothing happened. But when my grass grew a little uneven one summer week, I got a warning letter in the mail. It didn't take a genius to figure out I was being singled out. Asterisk. I tried to ignore it at first. I'd worked too hard to get here. I wasn't going to let Patricia or anyone else push me out. But her presence was always there, lurking, watching, waiting for me to slip up. And while I brushed off the small stuff, I had no idea just how far Patricia was willing to go when she felt her perfect neighborhood was being threatened. Because Patricia's breaking point wasn't my lawn, or my trash can, or even me. It was the moment I finally got the car I'd always dreamed of owning. The car that made her obsession with me boil over into something far uglier than HOA letters and passive-aggressive smiles. That car was the Mustang, and it was about to change. Everything. I still remember the day I picked her up, my Mustang. The dealership was 30 minutes away. The drive back felt like floating on air. Bright red-black racing stripes down the hood, leather seats that smelled brand new, and that unmistakable growl when I tapped the gas. I had worked my whole life for this car. Overtime, hours skipped vacations, saving every spare dollar. It all led to that moment when the salesman handed me the keys. For a kid who used to tape Mustang posters to his bedroom wall, finally owning one was more than just buying a car. It was proof that I belonged here. Proof that my hard work meant something. I pulled into Maplewood Estates with the windows down, the late summer sun painting everything gold. Kids were riding bikes in the cul-de-sac. Neighbors were watering their lawns, waving casually. And then I saw her, Patricia Walker. She was standing on her porch with a cup of iced tea in hand, her blonde hair catching the light. Her smile froze the second she saw me. I slowed to wave, trying to be neighborly, but her eyes didn't soften. They narrowed. She sipped her drink slowly, watching me pull into my driveway like I'd just driven a tank through her flower bed. I should have known right then that the Mustang wasn't just a car anymore. It was a target. That evening, after parking the Mustang neatly in my driveway, I started wiping it down, that new owner ritual. A black SUV slowed as it passed my house. I glanced up and saw Patricia behind the wheel. She didn't wave. She just rolled past, staring at me in my car as if she was committing it to memory. The next morning, found the first note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper. Typed neatly on HOA letterhead. Reminder, vehicles should be parked in the garage overnight to maintain the neighborhood's appearance. Street or driveway parking is discouraged. Please comply to avoid fines. I stood there, reading it twice. My garage had space, sure, but this was the first time I'd ever heard of such a rule. Neighbors left cars outside all the time, sedans, trucks, SUVs. But suddenly, now that I had a Mustang, it was an issue. That evening, I walked over to ask Patricia about it. She was in her yard trimming her roses. "Hey, Patricia," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I got your note about parking. Just wanted to ask, is that an actual HOA rule? Because I've seen plenty of cars and driveways around here." She didn't look up right away. Snip, snip went her shears. Then she straightened, adjusting her wide-brimmed sun hat. "It's in the handbook," she said smoothly. "Perhaps you didn't read it carefully when you moved in." "I read it," I replied. "Didn't see anything about no driveway parking." Overnight, her lips curved in that smile of hers, the one that always felt like it was hiding a knife. "Oh, we like to keep our neighborhood uniform. Not everyone appreciates flashy cars cluttering up the street. Some of us value a certain aesthetic." Flashy, there it was. Swallowed my irritation. "It's not on the street. It's in my driveway." Her smile sharpened. "All the same, it draws attention." I just stared at her for a moment. Didn't even realize what she was saying, or maybe she did. Either way, it was clear. Patricia wasn't talking about HOA rules. She was talking about me. About what it meant for me, a black man in Maplewood Estates, to own something she thought was too nice, too loud, too visible. I forced a polite nod. "Thanks for clarifying." Then I turned and walked away, every step heavy with the knowledge that this was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, the notes kept coming. Reminder, please keep noise levels low. Vehicles revving engines are disruptive. Reminder. All exterior maintenance must meet neighborhood standards. If your lawn shows signs of patchiness. Reminder. Trash bins should not be visible from the street. I knew what this was. Patricia was building a case, a paper trail she could wave in my face later. Meanwhile, my neighbors, the ones with peeling paint on their shutters, the ones whose kids left basketball hoops on the curb all day, somehow never seemed to get these reminders. One Saturday, I was washing the Mustang when a guy named Greg from 2 houses down walked over. Middle-aged, easygoing, always wore cargo shorts. "Man, that's a sweet ride," he said, circling the car with admiration. "How fast does it go?" I laughed. "Fast enough that I'm not trying to. Find out in Maplewood." "Thanks, though," he grinned. "Well, if Patricia's giving you grief, just ignore her. She tried to fine me once for leaving my RV in the driveway for 2 days. Total waste of time. I fought it and won." I raised an eyebrow. "So she goes after everybody?" He hesitated. "Hey, not exactly. I've seen her let some folks slide. Depends who you are, I guess." That said it all. The turning point came one evening when I invited my sister Denise and her kids over for dinner. They loved the car, especially my nephew Yolan, who begged me to take him for a short ride around the block. We came back laughing, music playing low on the speakers, and there was Patricia standing at the edge of her yard with her phone out, filming us. I rolled down the window. "Is there a problem?" I called. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Just documenting HOA policy." "Documenting? What? That kind of driving doesn't belong here." "Speeding, loud music. We have families trying to sleep." I clenched my jaw. We'd barely gone 20 miles per hour. The music wasn't even past halfway on the volume dial. But Patricia didn't care. She wanted evidence, or something she could twist into evidence. Later, Denise leaned over from the passenger seat. "Wow," she muttered. "She's really got it out for you, huh?" I nodded slowly, watching Patricia as she finally lowered her phone, that smug smile never leaving her face. That night, I sat on my porch long after Denise left, staring at the Mustang in the driveway. It should have been a symbol of joy, a celebration of how far I'd come. Instead, it felt like a bullseye, a beacon for Patricia's obsession. And deep down, I knew the car wasn't the real issue. I was. The Mustang just gave Patricia reason to come after me harder. What I didn't know then was just how far she was willing to go. Let's make her point. Because the next step wasn't letters. It wasn't warnings. It was a phone call to the police, and when it came, it almost destroyed everything. It was a Thursday evening just past sunset when everything came to a head. I'd just come home from work, tired but relieved. The air was thick with the smell of barbecue from a neighbor's grill. Crickets chirped in the hedges, and the Mustang gleamed under the porch light like it was part of the scenery itself. I went inside, microwaved some leftovers, and settled onto the couch. Not even 10 minutes. Later, red and blue lights spilled across my living room walls. At first, I thought it was a traffic stop nearby. But then came the pounding on my door. Bang, bang, police. Open up. My stomach dropped. I froze for a second, then forced myself to the door, heart hammering against my ribs. When I opened it, 2 officers stood on my porch, hands resting. Near their belts, their flashlights flicked across my face, then over my shoulder, scanning my home like they were hunting for something. "Evening, sir," one said curtly. "We got a call about suspicious activity at this address." I blinked. Suspicious activity? What are you talking about? Before I could even process it, I heard the unmistakable click of heels. Patricia appeared from across the street, her arms folded tight, lips pursed like she'd been waiting for this moment. "There he is," she announced. "That's the car. He's been racing it up and down the street all week, blasting music, disturbing the peace. I saw him speeding earlier tonight. I had to call for the safety of the children." The way she said the children made my blood boil, like she was auditioning for sainthood while throwing me under the bus. I turned back to the officers. "That's not true. I just got home from work. I've been inside for 10 minutes. You can check my microwave if you want. The taller officer glanced between me and Patricia. Sir, do you own the red Mustang in the driveway? Yes, I said firmly. Patricia let out a little laugh. All sugar and poison. Well, of course he does. Who else would? That thing doesn't belong here. The shorter cop raised his hand, signaling her to step back, but she kept hovering close. Her words dripping into the night like venom. Look, I know what I saw. He peels out. He revs the engine. It's disruptive. I've documented it. Waved her phone like it was a badge. He's a menace. I felt my jaw clench so tight it hurt. With all due respect, officers, I've done nothing wrong. I drive the speed limit. I keep my music low. This is harassment. Plain and simple. One of the cops sighed. Do you have any witnesses? Before I could answer, the sound of a screen door creaked open. Greg, my cargo shorts neighbor, stepped onto his porch. Hey, he called out. That's nonsense. Marcus hasn't been speeding. He treats that car like it's made of glass. You should be asking why Patricia's always filming him like some wannabe detective. Patricia's head snapped toward him, her smile gone in an instant. Greg, mind your business. But Greg didn't back down. It is my business when you're trying to sick the cops on a man just for existing. Leave him alone. The taller officer rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. He turned back to me. Sir, we don't see any immediate issue here. Just try to keep things quiet, okay? Quiet. The word stung like a slap. I wasn't the one making noise. Wasn't the one calling cops for no reason. But here I was, standing on my own porch, being told to keep things quiet while Patricia smirked like she'd won. Understood. I said flatly, though every muscle in my body screamed against it. The officers gave me a final nod and walked. Back to their car. Patricia lingered just long enough to flash me a satisfied smile, like a cat that had just toyed with its prey. Then she turned on her heels and strutted back across the street. The cruiser pulled away, leaving me alone in the glow of my porch light. My Mustang sat there in the driveway, looking as innocent as it always did, but now it felt tainted. Like it was the reason I'd just been humiliated in front of half the block. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I sat those flashing lights, heard the knock on my door, felt the weight of suspicion pressing down on me. I kept asking myself, why? Why was she so fixated on me? Couldn't she just leave me alone? And deep down, I already knew the answer. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't just the music. It was me. My skin, my presence, my very existence in a neighborhood she thought belonged to her and people who looked like her. Patricia wasn't policing my car. She was policing me. By morning, word had spread. Neighbors glanced at me differently on my morning jog, whispers trailing behind me. Some looked sympathetic, others looked curious, maybe even judgmental. And Patricia. She was out front, watering her roses like nothing had happened, smiling and waving at anyone who passed by. The perfect suburban princess. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march across the street and tell her exactly what she was, a racist who couldn't stand the thought of me living beside her. But I didn't, because that's the trap, isn't it? One wrong move, one raised voice, and suddenly I'm the aggressor. So I bottled it up. But a bottle can only hold so much pressure before it explodes. The next week, I noticed something strange. Every time I left my house, Patricia's blinds would twitch. When I walked to the mailbox, she was just happening to be outside. When friends visited, she lingered close, ear tilted as if she was trying to catch every word. And then came the letter. Not just a reminder this time. A full-blown citation from the HOA, accusing me of repeated noise violations, improper vehicle storage, and get this, creating a hostile environment for neighbors. I stood there holding the paper, my hands shaking with rage. Hostile environment. The irony almost made me laugh. Patricia was the one making my life hell. That was when I realized something. Patricia wasn't just playing neighborhood watchdog. She was laying the groundwork for something bigger, something uglier. And if I didn't fight back, I was going to lose more than just my driveway space. I was going to lose my peace, my reputation, maybe even my home. I wish I could tell you that things cooled down after the police came, that Patricia realized she'd taken things too far and backed off. But if anything, she saw that night as just the beginning. By the following weekend, the neighborhood felt different, colder, divided. It started with the stares. People who used to wave at me on my jogs now averted their eyes. The couple who always stopped to admire the Mustang shuffled their kids along when I pulled into the driveway. Even the older woman down the block, who'd once complimented me on keeping my lawn so green, suddenly looked at me like I was hiding something sinister under the hedges. I didn't need a crystal ball to know why. Patricia had been busy. I caught the first whiff of it at the grocery store, of all places. I ran into Denise, the bubbly woman with the golden retriever, who I thought was friendly. She smiled nervously, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Hey, Marcus," she said, her tone thin. Listen, just wanted to say, I hope things settle down soon. For everyone's sake." I frowned. "What do you mean by that?" Her eyes darted to the side. Just, the whole situation with Patricia. People are talking." I tried to press her, but she quickly changed the subject and scurried off. And right there in the middle of the produce aisle, I felt the walls closing in. Patricia wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was poisoning the well. Later that evening, I came home to find another envelope taped to my door. This time, it wasn't a generic letter. It was a notice for a mandatory HOA hearing. Regarding ongoing disturbances linked to your property, the hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. I stood on my porch, staring at that piece of paper like it was a time bomb. My hand shook, not with fear, but with fury. Patricia had escalated her war. She'd weaponized the HOA itself. And it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about control. Over the next few days, the divide in the neighborhood became crystal clear. On one side were Patricia's loyalists, folks who clung to her every word, nodding along as she whispered about me in hushed tones. They were the type who loved rules more than people, who saw the HOA as their shield against anything that didn't fit their perfect little picture. On the other side were people like Greg. He walked across the street one evening while I was checking the mail. "You holding up okay?" he asked, his voice low so Patricia couldn't overhear. "Trying to," I admitted. He shook his head. "She's out of control, man. She's been going door to door telling folks you're reckless, that you don't respect the neighborhood." I told her she was full of it, but he trailed off, his eyes heavy with the weight of a truth we both knew. Not everyone would push back. "Thanks, Greg," I said quietly. "Means a lot." He nodded. "Don't let her run you out. That's what she wants." But that was exactly what Patricia was after. Control through fear. Every little thing I did, she twisted. If I washed my car in the driveway suddenly, it was creating a mess. If friends came over for dinner, suddenly I was causing late-night disturbances. If I played jazz quietly on my porch, suddenly it was disruptive noise. It was all so transparent. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was enforcing her vision of the neighborhood, one where someone like me didn't belong. And the sickest part, some people bought it. They nodded along. They believed her. The Sunday before the hearing, I went for a jog to clear my head. Halfway through, I noticed Patricia in her yard, talking to a small cluster of neighbors. She had that same fake smile plastered on her face, gesturing toward my house as she spoke. I slowed down just enough to catch snippets. Always loud. Doesn't respect the community. Not the kind of element we need here. Element. That word cut deeper than a knife. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. I locked eyes with her as I passed. For a second, the mask slipped. Her smile hardened, her eyes narrowing into something sharp and ugly. Then, just as quickly, she turned back to her audience, resuming her little performance. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the Mustang in the driveway. The car had started this whole mess, but by now I knew it was just a prop in a bigger play. Patricia didn't care about noise. She cared about control and about reminding me that, in her eyes, I was an outsider. And I thought about every story I'd ever heard. Men like me being targeted, labeled, pushed out. Some lost their homes. Some lost their freedom. Some lost their lives. I couldn't let that happen. Not to me. Not here. So I started preparing. I gathered every letter she'd sent, every citation, every bogus complaint. I wrote down dates, times, witnesses. I even asked Greg to be ready to testify at the hearing. Patricia wanted a war. Fine, but I wasn't going to fight it on her terms. I was going to fight smart. The night before the hearing, I had trouble sleeping. I kept pacing the living room, going over my notes, rehearsing what I'd say. Every time I tried to lie down, I'd picture Patricia's smug face, whispering poison into the ears of the board. Finally, around 2 a.m., I gave up and sat on the porch, letting the cool night air wash over me. The street was silent, the kind of silence that almost feels alive, and across the road. In the glow of her porch light, Patricia stood at her window, blinds parted, staring at me. Our eyes met. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She just stood there, watching like a predator sizing up its prey. A chill crawled down my spine. This wasn't just about a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was personal. It was racial. It was hate. And tomorrow, at that hearing, the battle lines would finally be drawn. The morning of the hearing, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. My body was awake, but my mind felt like it was wading through thick mud. I tried coffee, pacing, even blasting a little Coltrane through the speakers to center myself. But no matter what I did, one thought kept pulsing in my head. This isn't just about me. This is about what she represents. Patricia wanted me out. She wanted to make an example of me. And if I didn't fight back, I'd be handing her that victory. The HOA meeting was held in the clubhouse at the edge of the neighborhood. Normally, the place smelled faintly of chlorine from the pool out back and had that stale carpet vibe. But that day, it felt like walking into a courtroom. Neighbors filled the folding chairs, whispering like they were waiting for the opening act of a play. Some glanced at me with sympathy, others with suspicion, but all of them glanced. I was the spectacle. At the front sat the HOA board, 5 members, all wearing that serious, stiff look people get when they want to feel important. Patricia was already there, perched in the front row like a queen waiting for her subjects. She wore a crisp white blouse and a smug little smirk, blonde hair tucked perfectly behind her ears. When I walked in, she turned and flashed me a smile so sweet it could have been carved from sugar. But her eyes told the truth. Cold, sharp, predatory, the chairwoman of the board. A woman named Linda cleared her throat. "We are here to address ongoing complaints and disturbances involving Mr. Marcus Johnson." Hearing my name spoken like that, flat, clinical, like I was already guilty, sent a ripple of anger through me. But I kept my face calm. Patricia was invited to speak first. She stood, smoothed her blouse, and began her performance. "Thank you, board members," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "This has been a very difficult situation for our community. As you all know, I've been deeply involved in keeping our neighborhood safe and orderly for years, but recently, certain behaviors have been disturbing the peace." Her eyes flicked toward me, then back to the board. She listed her evidence: the night with the Mustang engine, the noise disturbances, the large gatherings, even the police showing up. Each point was exaggerated, twisted, sometimes outright fabricated. By the time she was done, you'd think I was running a nightclub out of my garage instead of living quietly in my home. "And it's not just me who's noticed," she finished, spreading her arms. "Many neighbors have expressed their discomfort, but they're too polite to speak up. So unfortunately, the burden has fallen on me to protect our community." She sat down, satisfied as if she'd just delivered a sermon. The board members nodded thoughtfully, scribbling notes. The audience whispered, and then it was my turn. I stood slowly, holding the folder of papers I'd spent nights preparing. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from the sheer weight of everything I needed to say. "First off," I began, my voice steady, "let me make something clear. I moved into this neighborhood because I wanted peace, because I wanted a community, work hard, pay my dues. And until a few weeks ago, I thought I was being accepted as part of this place." I looked directly at Patricia. But that changed the moment one person decided I didn't fit her idea of what belongs here. Patricia's smile tightened. I laid out my evidence, Every letter she'd sent, every bogus citation, every date, time, and witness. I pointed out the inconsistencies in her complaints. I reminded the board that the police had found nothing wrong. Then I dropped the bomb. And I need to ask, I said, raising my voice so the audience could hear, why is it that I'm the only one targeted? Because I can tell you, I'm not the only one who's washed a car in the driveway. I'm not the only one who's had friends over. I'm not the only one who's played music. But I am the only black man on this block. A hush fell over the room. Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her smile flickering. I'm not saying this lightly, I continued. But when someone singles me out, twists every little thing I do into a problem, calls the police on me for no reason, I have to ask myself why. And the answer is starting to feel real clear. That was when Greg stood up from the audience. With all due respect, he said firmly, Marcus is right. I've seen how Patricia's been acting. She's gone door to door trying to turn people against him. She called the police that night just to stir trouble. This isn't about noise or cars. It's personal. A murmur rippled through the room. The board looked at each other, suddenly uneasy. This wasn't the neat little case Patricia had promised them. This was messy. This was bigger. Patricia jumped to her feet, her mask cracking. That's ridiculous, she snapped. This has nothing to do with race. He's disruptive. He's dangerous. He makes people uncomfortable. And why do I make people uncomfortable, Patricia? I asked, locking eyes with her. Is it because of something I've done or something I am? For the first time since this all began, she didn't have an answer. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no words came out. The chairwoman finally cleared her throat. All right, enough. We've heard both sides. The board whispered among themselves, their expressions tight. Finally, Linda spoke again. Mr. Johnson, she said carefully, while we cannot condone harassment or discrimination in any form, we also ask that all residents be mindful of community standards. Given the conflicting testimonies, we find no grounds for disciplinary action at this time. The matter is closed. It wasn't the resounding victory I wanted, but it wasn't the defeat Patricia had counted on either. She sank back into her seat, her face pale with fury. As I walked out of that clubhouse, I felt every eye on me. Some sympathetic, some hostile. But I walked tall. Patricia had tried to paint me as a problem. I'd shown the cracks in her mask. And though the board hadn't fully called her out, the seed of doubt was planted. People had seen her slip. They'd heard the venom in her voice. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, she was starting to lose her grip. When I left that hearing, I thought maybe Patricia would finally back off. She'd been embarrassed, her lies picked apart, her credibility shaken in front of everyone. But I should have known better. People like Patricia don't retreat gracefully. They double down. The days after the meeting were quiet. It's quiet. I'd catch glimpses of her from my window, standing on her porch, arms crossed, glaring at my house like she was trying to set it on fire with her eyes. Sometimes she'd walk her little dog right past my driveway. Slow, deliberate, like she wanted to remind me she was still there, watching, waiting, and then it escalated. One morning, I stepped outside to grab the paper. And there it was, the N-word. Spray painted across my garage door in thick, ugly red letters. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The morning air felt sharp in my lungs, my heart hammering in my chest. My stomach twisted as I stared at that word, that centuries-old blade now carved into my home. Neighbors came out, drawn by the sight. Some gasped, some whispered, and Patricia. She stood across the street, sipping coffee, her lips curled in the faintest smirk. That was it. That was the breaking point. I called the police. They came, took photos, filed a report. But I knew we all knew nothing would come of it. Hate crimes don't get solved in neighborhoods like this, not when the perpetrator wears pearls and smiles sweetly at the officers as they take notes. I wasn't just angry. I was done. I cleaned the garage door myself, scrubbing until my arms ached, till the red paint smeared into pink streaks and finally faded. With every stroke, my anger hardened into something sharper, a plan. If Patricia wanted war, I was going. To give her one, Greg helped me set up security cameras, real ones this time. High definition, every angle covered. We aimed them at my driveway, the front door, even the strip of sidewalk Patricia loved to parade down. And then I waited. It didn't take long. 2 nights later, around 11 p.m., I caught movement on the feed. Patricia, creeping through the shadows like a thief. She was carrying something, a bucket. She tiptoed up to my lawn, looked around, and started pouring. When I checked in the morning, the grass along my walkway was dead, burned out in streaks where she'd dumped some kind of chemical that was. The evidence I needed? I downloaded the footage, clipped it, saved it to multiple drives. Then I went to the board. The emergency HOA meeting was even more crowded than the last one. Word had spread. People wanted to see what would happen next. Patricia sat in her usual front row seat, that same smug look plastered on her face. She was confident. She thought she was untouchable. Until I stood up and said, "I have video evidence to present." The board connected my laptop to the projector. The lights dimmed. And then there she was, Patricia caught red-handed on the big screen, poisoning my lawn like some cartoon villain. Gasps filled the room. Whispers turned into a low roar. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." Patricia shot to her feet. "This is taken out of context," she shrieked. "This is harassment. He's stalking me with cameras." "Harassment," I shot back. "Lady, you vandalized my property. You crossed the line." The board didn't need much deliberation. For once their verdict was swift. "Patricia Collins," the chairwoman said firmly, "your actions are in clear violation of HOA regulations, city ordinances, and basic decency. Effective immediately, you are removed from the board. Furthermore, the HOA will be pursuing legal action for damages." The room erupted, some in cheers, some in stunned silence, and Patricia, she broke. Her face twisted, her voice rising into a shrill scream. "This neighborhood is going downhill. People like him don't belong here. Been protecting this place, and you're all too blind to see it." Her mask was gone. The sweet, concerned neighbor act had crumbled, leaving nothing but raw, ugly hatred. Neighbors recoiled. Some shook their heads. Others pulled out their phones, recording the meltdown. Finally, 2 security officers escorted her out, still ranting, still spitting venom, and just like that, the queen of the cul-de-sac was dethroned. The weeks that followed felt lighter, like a storm had passed. Patricia's house went up for sale not long after. Rumor was she couldn't handle the shame. Or maybe the lawsuits. Either way, she was gone. I'll never forget the day the moving truck pulled up. I stood on my porch, sipping coffee, watching her load the last of her boxes. For once, she didn't look smug. She looked small. Beaten hour. Eyes met one last time. No words were exchanged. She climbed into her car, slammed the door, and drove off. And I swear, the whole neighborhood breathed a sigh of relief after she left. Things changed. Neighbors who'd once kept their distance started stopping by too. Chat kids waved when I passed. Even the older couple across the street brought over a pie one Sunday just to say they were glad I stayed. Greg and I became closer too. We laughed about how the whole ordeal had felt like living in some twisted reality show. But beneath the laughter was something deeper, a bond forged in fire. He'd stood up for me when it counted. I'd never forget that. Looking back now, I realized Patricia underestimated me. She thought I'd be easy to scare off. She thought she could bully me, isolate me, and eventually push me out. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for dignity, for the right to exist in a space she thought belonged only to her kind, and in the end, she lost. Because the truth always finds its way out. It might take time. It might take pain, but it comes. And when it does, no amount of fake smiles or pearl necklaces can hide it. I still live in that house today. The garage is freshly painted, the lawn green again. Cameras are still up, not out of fear. But as a reminder, vigilance matters. And every now and then, when I sit on my porch in the evening, sipping a drink while the cicadas hum, I think about Patricia Collins. I think about how she tried to break me, and how in the end, she broke herself. And I smile, because this is my home, my neighborhood, it's my story. And no one, not Patricia, not anyone, can take that away from me.